Okay. An extremely real problem here is that it is infinitely easier to develop a course of religious instruction that passes on information than to prepare one that brings a student into a personal confrontation. In other words, it's not about giving them the knowledge. It is the idea of helping the students to confront their lives, their thoughts, and develop a relationship with Christ, develop a relationship with God. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at what's called the Transformational Planning Framework. And I keep referring to it as the TPF, but this is the big picture. And we're going to go into each piece of it. Today, we'll for sure do the first half, and then we'll finish the second half and see how far we get after that. But for sure, we'll do the first half. And what do I mean by the Transformational Planning Framework? I keep saying it over and over, that the idea is to have the students to be transformed to be like Christ. Plato said, do not then train the youth to learning by force and harshness, but direct them to it by what amuses their minds. You know, that's what we want to do. And you think about, there's a study that they've done, and they do it over and over to find out what teachers think. According to teachers' question, what percentage of students were disengaged or unmotivated? Put in the chat what you think. According to teachers, question, what percentage of students were disengaged or unmotivated? Put in the chat what you think the answer is. What percentage of the students do you think in the classroom were unmotivated? Varsity says 30%, Angie 90%, 85%. Well, actually, what they find is that in any given classroom, you have about 60% of the students who are not engaged. Now, it's not as bad as you guys said, some of you said, but that's still bad enough. That's more than half of the students are not engaged. And of course, if they're not engaged, then that means that we haven't captivated them. If we haven't captivated them, then of course they're not being educated because they're not invigorated, right? Now, this is by Eric Jensen. He's a brain guru. I love Eric Jensen. I love his books. He did a thing called emotional states and learning. You take a snap of this, put the notes somewhere, wherever you want. If you want to, you can put it on the very last page of your transformational planning framework if you want to. But what I want you to understand here is what he means by the emotional states and learning. In other words, if there's we have to have a balance between skills and challenges. So if the skills are low, they don't need much skill, and there's not much challenge, then the students become apathetic and they don't learn. If this, yes, Angie.
Are you going to tell us when to put something in here, or should we just be taking notes?
That's what I'm saying. So when I did mine the first time, I actually turned to the back. So this is the front. You're going to put this on the front. I'll tell you that in just a minute. But on the back, what I did on the back is I actually put extra notes on the back of mine. So you can put it wherever you want. But yes, I'm going to tell you, because what we're going to do is we're going to do the whole TPF on here. But just to keep up with the extra notes, I say leave that for the extra space on the back. Okay. All right. Oh, that's fine. Let's see. So when Eric Jensen is talking about the skills that, let's say that you have skills that they are medium skills, but the challenge is low, then the students become bored. If you have high skills, but the challenge is low, then the kids are relaxed and they still don't learn anything. If the challenge is high and they don't have the skills for it, then the kids become anxious. If the challenge is medium and the skill set is low for that, then they worry about what they're doing. But we want to have a balance, what he calls the flow, where the skills are high and the challenges are high, and we help them get there. Eric Jensen, if you don't have any books by him, you might want to pick up one or two. He's really good. He does all about brain-based learning and education. If we were together, I'd tell you to talk to your 8 o'clock partner about what we refer to as emotional engagement in the classroom. And when we talk about emotional engagement, it is when you're saying that the students have to be, that you want the students to be emotional. In other words, the story, let's go back to the story that we mentioned at the very beginning. When we talk about the story of the death of Lazarus. Okay, how can you get the students emotionally engaged in the death of Lazarus? That's what you want to do. And what will that lead to? Well, of course, that's going to lead to the second coming. Because it gives you an opportunity to talk about the second coming. So what can you do? What kind of activities in your classroom can you cause and help the kids to become emotionally engaged? But that's what the transformational planning framework is all about, that we're going to get to shortly. But you guys don't have to do that. So we want to start with Give me a second. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to skip through this because we did some of this already. I want to go to Guy Claxton's idea about the generations of learning and what we have come through with in the U.S. with education. In the very beginning, there was an interest in learning as a complicated process. Learning was about raising attainment or standardized testing, and good teaching was seen as content and acquisition in a pleasant and effective environment. That's all that you cared about, okay? But you wanted the kids to do well on standardized tests. That's what we call the first generation of learning as it used to exist. You've got to make sure that they do well on the standardized tests. You got to make sure they do well on the ACT, on the SAT, which it was something else prior to that. And then the, what do we have now? It was before this one. Iowa Test of Basic Skills is what we used to have in our school system. Then you have the second generation where you were concerned about the students developing skills. And as they're developing skills, then you wanted them to be able to study well. So you're developing study skills. And then the practical things to help organize knowledge, engaged memories, mnemonic devices, so that they could use these skills, these devices to help them to do well on the test. But again, it was still heavy on testing, mind maps, etc. Good teaching was seen as delivering these techniques so the students could have them to help them to do well. Later on, and this was when I was growing up, they went from the focus on the standardized test, the focus on study skills, to now helping people to see that, hey, there's a learning mind. And if there's a learning mind, then the teacher has to help the students to improve their self-esteem, focusing on multiple intelligences, focusing on learning styles, brain compatible strategies, etc., to help the students to be able to learn better because we're going to where they are. So it's going to where they are. Now, it's not that we're leaving going to where they are, but now we're enhancing that just a little bit so that we're going to where they are to where we are now, and what we call help the students become better learners themselves. And we help them become better learners by allowing them to be involved in the learning process more than us feeding them. And really, in the days of artificial intelligence, teachers don't need to feed the facts to the students anymore, but we need to build an environment where it's a mental gymnasium where the kids are finding ways to use the facts that they're finding themselves. The content that's chosen is chosen for its potential to exercise valuable learning muscles, create projects, project-based learning, create activities that will get them into the community, bring the community to them. How can I help my students learn better? Based on what they need to know, based on their learning style. Now, I'm not going to get to that, but I do want to deal with things to help students do when they get stuck. Because in this program, the Bible Encounter program with the Transformational Planning Framework, they need to know what to do when they get stuck. You need to know what to do when you get stuck, and you've done it. Things such as split the question up, read the question again, email somebody, call somebody. What do I already know that can help me fix this? Sometimes we even use reference books and dictionaries, and then we go to the internet or share the problem with somebody else. So we want to help the students know what to do to get stuck. Again, this is what Bible Encounter is all about. And now I keep building it up, because I want you to understand that thinking strategies is what Bible Encounter is all about. Thinking strategies is what Bible Encounter is all about. Now, we are not going to do that. We are ready. So now let me show you my page. Now, don't do anything yet. But I take my book. If I have the little book, this is the book that you couldn't see anything if I wrote it on there. Then I take this little book, page 1 is facing me, and then I fold it back. Okay? I fold it back. All right? So that I have a halfway line there, right? And what I'm focusing on now is the top of that fold, right? So you can see what I did, which is what I'm going to help you do right now. This is a big one I did on the poster board. I folded it back. When I fold it back, I'm focusing on the top of page 1. And I tried to do mine colorful. I have several of these that I've done that are in different colors, but I fold it back and I'm working on this page. And around here, I have 2 lines of an arch here, and I have a line down the middle And this is where we're going to be putting everything. And then putting everything that goes in the top section. And then on the bottom section is where you're going to put the extra notes, because I'm going to give you a lot of notes now to put in this section. If there's any notes that you decide that you want to do that I haven't given you specifically and told you to write down, you can put them on the back. Because I started writing some stuff on the back here, but that's the blank page that you can write anything you want on. Okay. All right. So now, again, I'm working with it like this. All right. You see where I am? Your little book. You're working with it like this. All right. Okay. So, arch. And what I wrote on this is orientation. What I wrote inside those two curved lines is orientation. So we're doing orientation now. All right. And let's see, it's a lot nicer on the one that I did here. Orientation is the first phase of the transformational planning framework. Orientation starts with learner bait, or what we call the curiosity hook. What are you going to do to hook the kids into the learning? Madeline Hunter was probably the first one that I knew to actually pinpoint how to write a lesson plan. And so I used the things that I learned from Madeline Hunter before I came in contact with Transformational Planning Framework to know how to write a unit plan. And the first thing that she says is come up with an idea for a curiosity hook. I'm going to give you some examples of a curiosity hook in just a second. But why? Because it focuses on learner bait, where you're getting the students to ask, why did you do that? We have a logo for each one of these sections. The logo for the learner bait, of course, is a curiosity hook or a fish with a hook on it. So what can you do to make the kids, to hook the kids in? And for each one of these, you want to make sure that you have the fish, you want to have the logo somewhere. But this one is a fish with a hook. Now, Bob Nelson said, you get the best efforts from others, not by lighting a fire beneath them, but by building a fire within them. This is what we mean by the hook, grabbing them. This is what we mean by the learner bait or the curiosity hook, getting them to ask the question of, what is she talking about? What is he thinking? Where is he going with this? Now, of all of these, probably the phrase that I would probably look at the most is where Jensen says, the brain has a high attentional bias to some new or novel engage emotions early. We are driven by emotions. He says the first 7 minutes and the last 7 minutes of a session is key to learning. But don't skip the orientation phase. Don't skip the phase where you get them hooked, where you get them to want to know what we're about to learn. Okay. And actually, you shouldn't be teaching for an hour. You should be teaching for maybe at the longest 20 minutes, because if you haven't gotten it across to them in the first 15 minutes, they're not going to get it anyway. So in the learner bait phase, we emotionally hook the students into learning. We arouse their curiosity. We make them what we call hunger and thirst after righteousness. Or remember what the brain research says, that the brain requires novelty for the introduction. This is the introduction to the lesson. Now, I'm going to stop sharing for just a second. And if you might have this book already, you might not. Remember, because of copyright rules, I can't make copies and give them to you guys. So what I do is and I got permission because I'm teaching online, because normally I have these books with me when I teach in person. So what I did was I got permission to provide a few units online for you guys. Okay. And I'm picking, this was the first unit that they came out with, which was 9.2. I think, Sam, this is the first one that you use. You used the 9th grade unit first, did you?
No, I didn't use the night because I didn't teach 9th grade at the time. I actually
Okay.
started
Okay. Well, no, most
yeah,
teachers
actually, no, I take that back. I did, yes.
most teachers started with the 9th grade unit because this was the first one. And so
Yes.
what I try to make available to you guys is the 9th grade unit first online, because this one, they allow us to give this one without any issues for the teachers to use. So I'm going to be using samples out of this for what we just did for orientation. And so now what you have at the top is you have orientation, and we looked at learner bait and we looked at, and so now I'm gonna give you some, and then you looked at some things to remind you about learning bait down here. And so I'm gonna give you some examples. When I open this book, or what you're going to do is you get an online access, complete or online access, once you finish this course, if you don't have it already. And I'm going to, in this book, Learner Bait, at the top of each page of the unit plan, it tells you which phase you're in. And so at the top of this one, it says that you're in orientation learner bait. You're in orientation learner bait. And then it says examples of what you can do for learner bait. You don't have to do them all. One says complete the straw demonstration, and then there's instructions in the appendix for how to do the straw demonstration. Another one says discuss clearly there is more to this demonstration than meets the eye. Do a large plain box on an empty table in front of your class. Place it. Stick the following words or signs on the box: journey, star, census. Or you can, do you know, and then you start asking the questions, and then you read. You don't have to do all of it. You do enough to hook the students in, because remember, that's what this section is. The orientation section of Learner Bait is designed to hook the students in. So you read through it and say, what do I want to do? And then at the bottom of it, it tells you what multiple intelligences are covered in this one. This one is covered verbal, logical, visual. You pick the kids, you know the kids that are in your class, you know what it is that they need for you to focus on. And so you pick the activities that go best for those kids. And that is the first one, and that is called Learner Bait. It's just some activities. You can have, I like to do videos for Learner Bait. I like to do field trips for Learner Bait. I sometimes have my students do drawing, because it's not just for Bible that I use this. For the format teaching style, I don't know how many of you are familiar with format, but it gives you ideas of things to do for Learner Bait. What can you do to hook them in the very beginning? Again, you don't have to do all of them. Just pick one or two to do, because if you try to do all of them, you will never finish a single unit in a quarter. And it shouldn't take you that long to finish a unit, okay? And we'll talk more about that, about how much time it takes to do units when we finish everything. All right. Remember, the focus is on interaction. It's grabbing the kids' attention and then helping them to want to interact with you. That's Learner Bait. Crowd-breaking activities work very good too. For example, going outside and playing a game with them, but not very long. Don't let it be very long. You just decide what's going to work, but it has to be something that deals with the lesson. After Learner Bait, I'm still at the very top. I then go to learning context. That's this way. And where Learner Bait was dealing with, what's this lesson about? Learning context is, learning context, I see what she's talking about. I see what he means. And the logo for learning context is helping the kids to see the big picture, what we call making the big picture connection, which is why we use a puzzle. It's the big picture connection, okay? A few quotes here from experts is from Eric Jensen, of course. I'll use him more than anybody. Is never assume that because something is relevant to you, it's relevant to your students. Help your students discover the relevance themselves. Help them to discover the relevance. Because if you don't help them to discover the relevance, and a way to do this would be, for example, with the 8 o'clock partners or the plot partners, or with the jotting on the Y chart, or just figure out ways to help them to figure out if they are on the same page with you. You don't give them a bad grade because they're not on the same page, but you need to know where they are to see if you are together at the learning context phase. Because the learning context, it precedes what is probably one of the most important phases, and that is where we're going to go in after this. Make biblical experiences relevant to the lives of the students. Create opportunities for the students to see the meta-narrative. Create an opportunity for students to see how they fit into the big picture of life and eternity. And if you do that, then guess what? Your discipline problems are going to disappear, because all of your students are going to be engaged. Now, when we think about learner context, I'm going to give you some more examples of learning context. They might include brainstorming with the students, such as brainstorming why God did something or why the people reacted the way they did. Another example would be having the students paraphrase something, give them a passage and have them paraphrase it. Another example would be help the students to see why Why would the Israelites respond to something the way they did? Give them an opportunity to write it down. And another thing would be for them to, here's one, it says, establish prior knowledge by asking students to share what they already know about a particular story that you're about to look at. So learner context, help them to put it in context for whether, I have a friend who says all the time, we used to teach some history classes together, and she would say the biggest problem in history when we look at the historical narrative is that we don't spend enough time helping the students to see history from the standpoint of the people who were living the history. Okay. All right. So again, let me stop for just a second to make sure we're on the same page. That was there. That was all of that was here. And then you put all the notes down here. Okay. Now I'm turning it to the second page. And this is kids kind of tricky. When I turn to the second page, mine looks like this. Right? But I'm dealing with page 2 because of the way our circle works. Page 2, I am drawing. And so when I fold it, look at when I fold the top back. And now I'm looking at the bottom. And this is exploration. I'm going to do it again. This is page 1, right? And for page 1, I folded it like that. And the top was orientation. Okay. Now I'm turning it over to page 2. And on page 2, I folded that. This is page 2, all right? Nothing's on the top because that's where you're writing your notes. And on the bottom, exploration. And so for this one, I put exploration around here, all right? And the notes are going to continue here, okay? All right, ready? All right. So we talk about exploration. This is that memorable narrative that you want the students to have. This is that animated learning that why you went into teaching in the first place. Sam is so good at this. I'm sure the rest of you are too. But Sam would write his own plays for his classroom and for the school based on a Bible story. You know, that's what teachers do. I'm sure you guys make videos for your students. I'm sure you come up with all kinds of picture activities for them to do. But whatever it is, this is the animated learning so that you make the story come to life for the students. And that's why we call this the memorable narrative. Okay. The logo for this one, of course, is the drama mask, because we want to make sure that the students are into the picture of it. They're into the drama of it. They're into the animated of it. You know, and some people say, well, why do we want to do all this animation? Well, what about Jesus? Matthew 13:3. He told them many things in parables. Jesus was the best storyteller that ever lived. He was not necessarily a theologian, but he was God who told stories. You know, you cannot know what you do not feel. You cannot know what you do not feel. So we have to make sure that emotions are the glue that we have to make sure that emotions are the glue of retention. And then, of course, Ralph Waldo Emerson said, nothing was ever achieved without enthusiasm. So when we're doing the stories, we want to make sure that we are enthusiastic with it. So we think about animated learning, the voyage into the biblical story, the facilitated voyage into the biblical story. As a Christian teacher, tell the story. Remember, history is all about his story, telling his story for the students. We do everything we can to tell his story. All right. Examples. I pretty much have given all of those already. And that is write a play, present, have the students, after they write the play, or you can write the play, help them make a video, or you can make the video. There's just so many. There's so many. You don't have to do all of them, but you pick what it is that you want to do for the animated learning, and then you do it with the kids, or you have the kids do it themselves. And then we do engaged learning. Now, engaged learning is after they have done it, after you've read the story to them, then you're going to dive deeper into the story. So wherein before it was reading the story or writing the story or watching the story, now it becomes, okay, what do we get out of this? And that's why we use the flippers, the water flippers, whatever you call them, because we're going thinking about a deeper dive into the ocean to understand it. Okay. Matt Anderson said, to discover new oceans, you need to lose sight of the shore. In other words, go out there. Don't be scared. Just get out there. This one by Schultz and Schultz, Jesus didn't come to settle minds, but to jolt them. He didn't come to make us more comfortable, but to stir our thoughts, to help us learn, to make us think. That's what Jesus did. Now, Gardner is on there, but I'm going to skip to Ellen White. I skipped it, where she says, but there is but little benefit derived from a hasty reading of the scriptures. One may read the whole Bible through and yet fail to see its beauty. One passage studied until its significance is clear to the mind and its relation to the plan of salvation is evident, is of more value than the perusal of many chapters with no definite purpose. So we want to make sure that we're giving the students time to dig into it, to comprehend it, to understand it. So when we're dealing with a piece that says engaged learning, what do we want to remember? Oh, sorry. Oh, I went too fast. No, am I there? Are you guys? Oh, okay, engaged learning, yes. We want to make sure that it is inquiry-based. We're asking questions. We want to use thinking-driven pedagogical methods. And we want to encourage students to own the learning process. And I was trying to find a page. Oh, here it is. It's right here. I'm right on it. For engaged learning from the book. And I'm going to show you in just a second. Discuss it, synthesize it, make new discoveries about the biblical culture. And then make sure you're using the learning styles or the multiple intelligences and brain compatible learning activities. Now, let me stop because now I am on the right page. Yes, I am on the right page. So then you go to, on the one now that says exploration, animated and engaged. That's what it says at the top. And then it goes down and it says, here's the note for the teacher. And then this is waiting for the deliverer. This is called waiting for the deliverer. And here's one. It says, you're sharing with the students. When Adam and Eve first heard that God had a plan to save them from their sin and that a deliverer would come, they clung to this promise, hoping that their first son might be him. That's what you say. Then you ask the students, from what you know, what is the right time for Jesus to come? Then you read to them. Then they have it in here. It's called At the Right Time from the book Messiah. And then you have the students write about it, what you just read. And then after they write about it, then you have the students share it. That's one activity. Then you go to the next page and there is another animated and engaged activity. So you pick the one that you want to do, but you don't do all of them. You pick one, and I keep emphasizing that because over and over, I have teachers who send me messages and say, I didn't get a chance to finish. Well, you're not going to finish if you try to do all of it. You have to pick what it is that you're going to do, but just make sure there's a flow to it, okay? Max Lucado, we know you guys know Max Lucado. It focused on, he says, knowledge of the workings shouldn't negate wonder, but knowledge should stir wonder. Okay. All right. Now we are going to pause there because you guys have already done that. And I'm going to say, how are we doing so far? You guys okay? Questions okay? Okay. Now, what we've done so far is we've done orientation. You have your notes down here. Went to 2, and we did exploration, and that's animated. That's upside down. That's the memorable narrative and the deep experience, which is animated, engaged. And then now we're going to 3. Now notice how I'm doing 3. So there's 1, 2, and now 3. So again, you're taking 3 and you're turning it down. All right. So on one side, you have exploration, and on the other side, you have now reflection. This one is reflection. We good? And on reflection, and I'm catching up with it in the book that I'm using because they're all different. I have a couple books down here ready. Okay. And I'm counting. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages of exploration in this book, 9.2. And you're definitely not going to do all of those. You are not going to do all of those. You just pick the ones that will work, okay, for you. So now I'm going to reflection, and I'm going to share here what I have for reflection. So we don't need to do all of that. All right. So reflection. So we have two pieces to reflection, just as we had two pieces to the rest of them. The first one is heart learning. And this is helping the students to make connection with God. You want them to reflect that, and what they're reflecting on, remember, everything's connected. They're reflecting on what they did in exploration, which they explored based on what they did from the hook. Okay, whatever you did from the hook to get in. So now we're at heart learning, or helping the students make a connection with God. And you've heard me say, if at the end of the school year, you have not made an appeal, you should have made at least 3 appeals for your students for baptism, then you have not completely done your job. Because when we're done with the reflection of the heart learning, the students should be ready to have a closer walk with God. What can we do to help them really think about what we've been discussing? John 13:3, Jesus said, "This is life eternal, that they might know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom you have sent." Pull it together so that they will know him. Know him. Our job is to open the windows to his presence. To his presence. That's our job. Okay? To have a connection with God. Now where's my next page? I'm gonna stick to it. Here it is. So we create an environment for transformation, because that's really what heart learning is. We create an environment for awe, so that the students will say, wow, I want to have that connection with God. We are creating that environment. We create an environment so that the children will want to have change, that they want to change to be like God. And let me stop here and give you some examples of what they have for reflection heart learning. It says, here's a story here to share. And then after they share it, then there's a video to watch. And I actually have that video clip. I don't know if I'll be able to show it. I definitely be able to show it today, but it's called the pale blue dot. And then after you show the pale blue dot that goes with this, then you go ahead and you discuss that. So that's one thing. And then after that, if you want to do something else, then you share the story from Messiah, page 27, which is it's talking about when Jesus came. And then you share how amazing to think that the very God who created everything actually came to live with us and for us. And then you give the students an opportunity to reflect. You have them write in their journal, how often do you think about Jesus' feet walking on the dirt? You have them journal, how much do you believe that he was really here on this earth? That's it for that heart learning. And then there are 3 more that you can do. And then it goes to the next page then, and it picks up on the soul learning. Okay, the soul learning, which is what we're going to start with next time. We are going to stop here and start with the soul learning next time. How are you doing? You guys okay?
Yeah,
Questions?
great.
Questions? Okay, all right. So, and I'm stopping because I know Angie's leaving, and I don't want you to have to go back and watch the video. So it doesn't make any sense for me to keep going, because I really want to respect your time. So I'm going to pray with you guys and let you go. Father God, I do thank you for this day. I ask that you would be with us as we travel throughout the rest of this day to our appointments and whatever we have to do, and help us, Lord, to be patient with ourselves and patient with each other as we're trying to comprehend those things that you want us to have before we go into the classroom with our children in the fall. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay.
Amen. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'll see you later, Angie, Tim, Sam, Bartley. You guys okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. I'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.